Okay, Oedipus the King. But first, I will talk about the grading process, which did have a bit of a boost last night. You did not see, but yesterday for all my classes, I walked in. I remember I said I was going to grade the discussion post one on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And then I was going to, I don't know if any of y'all saw, most of your grades rolled in last night around midnight or so for discussion post. On Tuesday night, I sat down to grade, and I was grading for a little bit on the discussion posts. And then, does anybody's like internet modem like crap out every once in a while? Like it just will stop, and I was like, okay, well I'll look on my phone for a few minutes, and then I'll go back to the computer, it'll be fine. So I played like a game of Sudoku, and then I came back, and then it was still messed up. And it said I was on the Wi-Fi, but I had no internet. I was like, it's weird. So I disconnected and then tried to reconnect. No, I went back to and I unplugged my modem / router that Time Warner Cable has, and I plugged it back in, and it had changed the name of what I had named it to the default name. And I was like, this is not going to be a good scenario. And turned out our internet was completely out now, because when I called the next morning, because you can't call them at night, I mean, you can't get anything fixed, why bother? So I called them the next morning, and they said, oh yeah, your modem is supposed to last 2 years, and it lasted 3.5, so you have to get a new one. I was like, that's great. So yesterday I brought to class the modem and showed everybody, this is what no longer works, this is why I don't have internet. And then yesterday I went to Time Warner Cable, picked up the new modem, hooked it up, same problem. So I called the lady on the phone, and it's one of those people where she knows how to fix your stuff, but she has no idea what the stuff does. Like a technician, they're kind of like, I was like, okay. And she said, well, don't change the name of your Wi-Fi for like 3 or 4 days, so you can reduce confusion from your devices. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I said, why? Why do I need to change the name of if I'm getting internet now after what you fixed, why can't I go and immediately change the Wi-Fi name and password back to the previous? She says, it'll confuse your devices. And I was like, explain what that means to me. She's like, well, the devices, they'll be in confusion. And I was like, so, and I didn't say this, but I was like, so you don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, oh, thank you. Yes, I will definitely not do that. 3 seconds later, I went in and changed the Wi-Fi to what I wanted, added all my Xbox One settings, and everything was fine. Because you want to make your new Wi-Fi the same thing in password as the old one. That way, all your devices automatically they connect automatically like they're supposed to, and that's what happened. But it wasn't until 8:30 last night that I had internet, and then I started grading discussion posts and promptly fell asleep like usual. And then at midnight woke up and graded whatever I had and said, I don't want to grade essays while I'm in this state of half sleepiness. So tonight is essays, but this is did I tell you about on Monday I had to go pick up my daughter?
Yeah.
Well, I usually on a Sunday when I pick up my daughter, I then pick her up on Thursday as well. So this is a week where I had to pick her up on Monday and on Thursday. I'll be picking her up tonight as well, so who knows how much time I'll get tonight. And tomorrow we have a prior engagement, some kind of family game night. It's like the rest of my family. I love my family. But, man, I got so much to, so Saturday is really when I'm going to get started. Like, I'm sorry, like I wish I had a better scenario. I mean, just been like the week from, I don't know what you want to call it, week from, can you say week from hell? Is that okay, or is that not? Is that like cursing? I don't know. Not a great week in terms of having free time to get stuff done. But that's where I'm at, is now I have the free time and the freedom to do whatever I want. And I'll be grading some after school today as well. So I should get through those English 1301 essays kind of quick. We'll see. Any questions about any of that stuff? Accusations, expressions of anger. No? Okay. Guess we'll go to Oedipus then. And we'll talk about Oedipus. We talked about all the conventions of Greek drama last time. We talked about terminology specific to plays, which there wasn't a whole lot of it. When it came to tragedy and Greek drama, there was. So that stuff has been covered. Now we're just getting into Oedipus and questions. So we'll start with any questions that you all have, or any observations you wanted to make about the tragedy. Question? Questions?
Oh, okay.
Questions? Hello?
How'd you know we weren't gonna say anything?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. I don't know, but I'll still answer it. 5 years of this? Actually, I don't know. Just over time, it becomes clear.
Well, actually, won't say anything. It's fine. Just add cues.
That does, however, your question makes these two irrelevant. Although I did make it through every one of them yesterday in the other class. So, I had asked you to think about this yesterday, not yesterday, but Tuesday, when we talked about Oedipus, because I'm curious as to what you think. Not every, but most tragic heroes, at least the good ones, have some sort of tragic flaw, that causes them to, in addition to the gods doing what they do, because it's like you're subject to the gods, and Oedipus was, there was the whole prophecy, the gods made the prophecy, oracles confirmed the prophecy too, and so
He ruined his life.
Yeah, kind of ruined his life based on that, but also, was there any, or did you see, or what do you think is the tragic flaw that he had that caused all of this to essentially be able to come about in addition to the prophecy?
Well, he was getting away from the curse, but he was actually making the curse happen.
True. And now what is it internally that would cause something like that to happen? I mean, what is the I guess his...
Anger?
Anger? He has like an anger thing where his anger caused him to leave and not want to kill his dad?
No.
It made him kill the person that wasn't dead.
That's true. Anger did cause him to kill his actual dad. So maybe we'd say following prophecy to get away from who you think is your dad. Or yeah, getting away from prophecy is what I should have said, not following prophecy. Although he inadvertently did follow the prophecy. So trying to get away from who you think is your dad, to not kill him, no flaw there, right? That's fine. That's the gods.
You're like, okay, good guy.
Killing guy on the road because you're mad probably is a flaw. Probably not something you want to do. My suggestion, if y'all ever come at a crossroads,
Kill him.
I'm still not 100%. I mean, do y'all really understand? Because I'm still not at 100% on why that murder had to happen.
Well, some versions of the story will tell you that one of the, because he was like, when he left home, he kind of walked a long way to get to the crossroads, so he was dirty and ripped, his clothes were ripped and stuff in some versions, and so he was ripped. He got pipes. But some
different kind of rip. That
but some of the king's crew, I guess, his party, thought he was gonna come across them and beg for something, and they were disgusted with him, so they started beating on him first, and then he single-handedly ripped all of them apart. So that's just some versions of the story, but it would be revenge in some cases.
So this is I like that. That version of the story makes sense. If he traveled a long way, he's not really got a whole lot of stuff with him. He looks kind of like a hobo who's going to try to either attack you or ask for something.
Yeah.
And so, get him, put him under arrest. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but apparently, in that version, the king didn't know he was there because he was in the carriage, he was just riding along, and then the carriage stops, and he's like, okay, you can do, and everyone's fighting outside. And then the thing in the original story, I think, is that actually proves that Laius was his father is whenever he kills the king, he takes a briefcase or something, he takes something of his because it was worth a lot, and then when he reaches the city that Laius is king of, he just keeps it with him forever, and then whenever this famine or curse or whatever comes about, and they have to figure out who's King Laius, someone finds it and brings it up, and he's like, oh, well, that may have been me, and then the crowd ends up ripping out his eyes instead of himself.
I think I like this version better, at least in terms of with the briefcase we have hard evidence. I like how it's almost like if you think about it, it's like a live individual court case or a crime solving something, but he's having to use the evidence he's essentially having to kind of trust in the people around him to So it's not that Oedipus is able to solve the thing on his own completely.
He has to use the testimonies from the people around him.
Yes.
That prove
So he has to have some level of trust in those who are providing the stories in order to make sense of what's going on. So there's that element. And also I like that he gouges out his own eyes. Despair.
I like what I don't remember who said it, but someone said like his tragic flaw or whatever was his like anger, like how quick he was to anger, and that really is shown whenever he's having the conversation with the older man, and he automatically assumes that like his prophecy is against him specifically, and Creon is against him, and suddenly everyone's against him in that moment because the one guy said one thing.
I think I think I want to combine what you said with what Sarah said. We're going to have a kind of a Lono Quinlan think tank here. We're going to combine, we're going to cross the aisle, quite literally, with the exception of Hayden, who he's chilling. You're like the diplomat. You're like, what do you call it? The what do you call it? We have people, ambassador. There you go. You're the Quinlan ambassador at Lono, who they all apparently trust for you to be behind their backs.
He's gonna stab him. I don't trust him.
I have no idea why I'm saying, but I like that you added the word like quick or fast to anger,
Yeah.
and that's kind of a quick-tempered kind of thing. He gets angry and quick and doesn't really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't put the thought in. He's just, well, Tiresias said that it's me. Creon sent Tiresias. Creon wants me dead,
Yes.
or Creon wants but my kingship.
Yes.
Creon's like, I live the good life.
I like not being directly responsible for what happens in your land. I'm just like in the background.
Like I kind of know that if you think I know that think about the Obama's kids or Trump's kids. You got their except for Ivanka because she's really suffering quite a bit right now from people protesting her line of clothing from stuff her dad's doing. But think about, did I mention to y'all a few weeks back about, I think, which Obama kid is it? It's, what are the two? Do y'all remember, the two daughters' names?
Was it the one that was going
Molly
to be an
and
intern
Sasha.
or whatever you were talking about?
Yeah, the one who's going to be an intern.
The oldest one.
So it's like, I don't know, think about it like a family enterprise. Like if they were all, if he dies, then his wife becomes queen president or president woman.
Madam President?
Madam President? I don't even know what the words are, I guess. It should just be president, but I was thinking queen because I'm still in Oedipus mode.
It shows respect if you say Madam President.
That would have been an interesting thing to hear. I still think we will have someday. If you want to mark it down, I think that actually our first woman president will be, what year is it? 2016. I think our first female president will be in the year 2030. That's my guess. Because what you're going to have is probably you're going to have 4 years of Trump, and if he doesn't screw up things too bad, you'll have 4 more years because people don't like change. So that's what happened with. If you look, we had 8 years of Bush, we had 8 years of Obama. I think it's a lot of people go, well, the world didn't end. Let's keep this person around, And so then I think after that, probably after Trump. Whether it's 4 or 8 years, you're going to have then the Democrat president come through, and it's going to be 8 years. So it'll just flip back and forth, as they tend to do eventually. But I think I don't know. That might even be too soon.
23?
I think the strongest candidates that you have are really, really liberal right now. Probably the strongest female candidate for president on the Democrat side, if you're going to have any chance by 2030, would be Elizabeth Warren. There's a lot of people who hate Elizabeth Warren, right? Anybody know who that is?
No.
Okay, anyways, that's all. Neither here nor there.
Brian is the one who knows the most about politics in Clinton.
Who?
Brian.
Who's not
The
here.
one that's inside.
The one who's missing.
Of course, that is our tragic flaw.
Yeah.
Classic. So what I was trying to get to though, and I ended up going on kind of a side tangent, but the whole point of this is, let's assume that if somebody dies in the family, that the next person becomes president, right? So it's Barack and
Michelle?
good gracious, I don't know why I'm so bad with names today. Michelle then becomes president or something. Let's actually assume that maybe one of the daughters becomes president somehow.
Both parents die.
Skips the mom. Maybe because they're progeny and she's the wife, and so they skip ahead of her somehow. That's how it used to work with sons, so why not let's just switch it to daughters. But anyways, like the one I was talking about, yeah, so you're like the intern. So like she's gonna get to go like intern for a film company. She's gonna go to Harvard. Basically, it's like, why would I want the presidency, Dad? I'm getting all the benefits right now of you being president without having to deal with any of the problems of you being president.
Sure.
Like, you look like you've aged 20 years in 10.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
He did. I mean, it happens a lot. Like, when people turn president, they look like they age. I don't know where Donald Trump is going to go with 20 years.
He's
He's
gonna
70.
lose his toupee. That's it.
He's gonna lose his orange skin.
It's like, I don't have time for the tans anymore.
He's gonna be
Uh,
ashy. He's gonna be ashy and bald.
So, I mean, it's way tough to be the leader of a place, like, like a king or a president. It's really tough on you. You have to make a lot of tough decisions. So I really think that Creon makes a fantastic argument there. He's like, listen, why would I want this? Like, I get all the good stuff without having to do anything.
Yep.
It's fantastic. Like, I really do not want your job, like, ever.
Like, don't worry.
I'm not like Loki in the Avengers. Like, if you think about Loki, if you don't think Loki in the Avengers,
Yeah.
he is the true embodiment of somebody who wants power.
Mhm.
He doesn't even care if people know it's him. He just wants the power.
Yeah.
He doesn't need people to know he's Loki. He's like, I'll be fine just acting as my dad after I killed him.
Yep.
For like the rest of time being the king, but I have the power. Like, that's all he cares about. That's like really scary.
Yeah, he doesn't want people to know his name or anything. He doesn't want to be famous. He just wants to be in control.
It's crazy. There's people who are like that, I'm sure. Creon's not one of those.
No. Creon's a good, humble dude.
He's like, if this thing ever goes south, I'm gonna be out of the castle. Like, I won't get the people feeding me grapes
Thing.
on the veranda. Like, I literally don't have to reach for the grapes. They just put them in there. That's so much preferable to having to have somebody feed me grapes and then decide whether 1,000 of the people in town are going to die of dysentery. Like, I don't want to have that decision. Like, what should we do with the plumbing, sir? I don't know. I don't care. I just want grapes. Give me grapes. So, it's one of those situations where if he had not been so quick-tempered, if he'd actually thought about it for a minute, I have no idea where that came from. That was really weird. Y'all have no idea what I'm talking about, but he didn't think about it. He got quick-tempered, and I would say, and that's from what I got from the other class as well, that probably quick-tempered, if he has a tragic flaw, that's his tragic flaw. There was this one girl in the other class, she had this genius idea, which I had not thought of ever, but Oedipus should have just resolved at some point, like, under no circumstances, ever, will I kill anybody for any reason. And that would have prevented him from ever fulfilling the prophecy. Because it's like, you see like an old lady on the side of the road, and she like tries to stab you. You're like, I can't do it. You're like, if you try to just decide, you go, that can't possibly be my father, so I can kill her, it's fine. Somehow the gods are going to make that old woman your father.
Yeah,
They're going to be like, oh, this is Tiresias, who is actually your father when he had the sex change. Did y'all know about that? The prophet in the Oedipus. It's never mentioned here, but Tiresias, and if you stick with me long enough to hear, go to Britlit 2, if you'll remind me, Tiresias makes an appearance in The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. But one of the things that's particular about Tiresias is, like, one time, I think he saw two snakes fighting.
Isn't he blind?
Or copulating. Well, he wasn't.
Okay.
He saw two snakes copulating,
Lit.
and he, like, smacked them or killed them.
Nice.
And whenever God saw that happen,
Okay.
was pissed off and decided to change him into a female.
It's not
Something I would
Loki.
do as a god.
So for 7 or 8 years, he was a female, living a female life. doing things that female do with men.
Of course.
And then he saw snakes fighting again and said, hey, if it changed me into a woman, maybe it'll change me back to a man if I smack him again. Which I was just like, maybe that just makes you a double female. But I don't know. And he does, and he switches back. And then later he's able to settle a dispute between somebody, a couple of the gods ask, is it more pleasurable to have love as a female or a man? And
What was his answer?
I think his answer was, I don't know, it was one or the other. I can't remember which one.
I'm Googling it.
I'm pretty sure he said it was more pleasurable as a woman, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, it's 50-50. But I believe, yes, I think that that's correct, because I think that the woman who heard that answer, she was trying to claim that it was men who have more pleasure, and the man was trying to claim it was women who have more pleasure, the gods. And when he provided the answer that she didn't like, she stabbed his eyes out or struck him blind.
Well, okay.
That's nice.
And so he was able, but I think as a result, I believe the god who he won the argument,
Yeah.
he felt bad for him, so he gave him the gift of prophecy to make up for the fact that he could not see things for real. Gave him the gift of prophecy so he could see things in the future. So he could see the future almost as good as any of the gods could who had that gift. But that's a super cool story too. And
Also, as a woman, he apparently became, when he was a female, he apparently became high priestess for Hera.
For who?
Hera, that's the goddess of marriage and woman.
I couldn't tell if you said Hera or Herod, like the king from the Bible, the one who really wanted Jesus dead,
the one
right?
who really wanted to kill all baby Jews because he knew that.
I think there's a Jesus out there. Let's just kill all the babies. This is how you prevent prophecy. Well, yeah, the baby Jews. But story of Tyrese is kind of cool. So that's like that guy, the guy who gives the prophecy here. He's gone through all that. Been a dude, been a woman, knows what it's like in every case. I'm really excited actually to read a book by Ursula K. Le Guin that won the Hugo and the Nebula, the highest science fiction awards you can get, called The Left Hand of Darkness, where it's a guy goes and he's on like a diplomatic mission to a planet where it has humanoids, I believe, but they can switch their gender back and forth, and so nobody considers themselves to be male or female.
That's cool.
Because just whenever they want, they can change to the other. So I've not read the book yet. I think I carry it with me at all times, though. No, I have it on my table at home. The one I have right now is Asimov's Foundation, which I've started it, but I didn't start to have to grade, and I haven't read a word since. So, tragic flaw. Quick to anger. Now, I guess it's really weird, too, because, I mean, does this bring me to the next question? It sounds like you guys probably, based on, I think, your responses, you do probably hold him personally responsible, at least for the murder of Laius, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was quick to anger, he killed the guy, he kind of deserves... And really, if you think about it, that's what they said the curse was for, the murder of Laius, right? It wasn't for marrying your mom and having kids. That he seemed not to know, and that he did, so... that similar things like that have happened in like reality, like even recently. Like I think that like a few years back, like maybe a decade ago or so, maybe 20 years, I can't remember. It was a guy met a girl at a bar and they struck up a relationship and they were having, they really, had a lot in common. They liked each other. They seemed to get each other. So after a short while, they ended up getting married. They had a kid. I don't remember if they started looking into ancestry or they just they were looking into their whole, I think they'd already had a kid maybe, and then they were trying to get their birth certificates to get married. And in the process of getting the birth certificates and, the marriage stuff, discovered that their birth mother was actually the same person. So they were brother and sister. But I think he had been adopted, maybe she wasn't, or something like that, or maybe she was adopted from a different place, or they had different foster parents. So after they had a kid, they discovered that they were brother and sister. But then at that point, they already had a kid, they thought, we love each other, we have a kid, so they just stayed together. If you think about how hard is that going to be for the kid if you then, divorce, and now the kid has a life of divorce. I mean, you're not going to be able to get out of that. You can't suddenly, oh, well, we'll just go our separate ways and you have the kid and I won't care about it. That's just not how life works. So it's just kind of, they said, well, we didn't know ahead of time, but now it is what it is. So they just, I think, continue to have the relationship. I don't know if they resolve not to have more kids. That I don't know. But it's what do you do in that scenario? It's at this point, he's loved Jocasta for, heck, even longer than those people who decide after 2 years, 15 years, right? For all intents and purposes, she's his wife, more so to him than his mother. If you hear that's your mother, you're like, ah, crap, my wife is my mother, not my mother is my wife. To him, it's his wife. Oh, wait, she's my mom? How do you even connect that? Because you already have a mom somewhere who's still momming it up in Corinth, and you're like, she's my mom. What the heck's going on? I don't like this. And Jocasta freaks out. She realizes what's going on, so she just killed herself. Which is probably a fairly common response in that scenario. Unless you go, really? Yeah. But I can't see that being a lot of people's responses. Is anybody else do you hold him personally responsible for all of it or just the murder?
Just the murder.
Just the murder? That's pretty common. Some people are like, no, it's a real. You should know. They're like, you should look in the mirror and say we have similar facial features. But it's how do you who thinks about that in a moment?
Not to mention, you're more attracted to people who look similar to you.
This is true, and really, I think it's more. I don't know if this is the case for women and men. My personal theory is that women are more attracted to men whose personalities are like that of their fathers. If their father was a good person, it's not if in all kinds of scenarios can change. But
it's so weird.
I don't know. I can't even say that because my wife, I have a sense of humor of my father-in-law, but I don't. We have completely different interests. But I mean, this happens to a lot of people. You end up marrying someone who's essentially like your mother, if you're a man. I think that's ingrained in us somehow. I didn't even notice, but when I started dating Chrissy, by the way, if you ever become advised by her, she's Christina or Mrs. Nichols. So when I met her, I was like, oh wow, she's really attractive. I like her a lot. And we started a relationship. We were together for a long time. And then she came over to my house one time, and I told her how my dad does this thing. Oh, this is so embarrassing. I might have to remove this. What time is it? Something 40. So he does this thing where he comes up behind my mom and is always lovingly said hello in a physical way, not just a hello way. Kind of a surprise, gotcha from behind kind of thing. Woo, and so. A snack or something like that. And so my wife was in the kitchen and she was trying to pick up some stuff that was on the floor and put in the trash, and she was bent over, and then she heard my dad come in the room and talk like she was my mom, and she's like, I don't think she's in here, and she was like, oh crap. And so she said it's Chrissy, and he's like, oh, I thought you were Mickey. Oh. And then he so my wife still contends that she narrowly avoided one of those love taps on that day, and I was like, how did he confuse it? Because you don't look anything like. You're 5'9", you're a long-haired brunette, you have fair skin. I was like, oh. Okay, I didn't know that about myself. She's like, everybody. I think if you do make a decision like that and you choose someone who's kind of. I was like, wow, that's really close to the physical description of my mom. I did not realize it before. Now, my ex-wife was not at all, but this wife is better. So, yeah, what time was that? Yeah, we'll cut that out. But I think that it's kind of unfair to hold yourself responsible for oh, this person looked like. Often people will naturally find someone who looks like the person that provided them care. Because you see when you're growing up, you're like, what should a wife be? And the only person you have as a model for that is your mom. And I think the same thing goes for your dad. So if you didn't like your dad, didn't work for you, then you probably don't choose, your dad. Anything that reminds you of your dad, kind of, because he wasn't a good dad or something. But if everything was nice, he probably would. I can't count how many people I've seen with somebody exactly like their fathers or their mothers, and you don't even realize it's happening, and it never occurs to you. So I think it probably wouldn't have occurred to Oedipus is like at all. And not only that, but if he's thinking, well, she's nothing like my mom, if he did think something, because he thinks he has another mom. And I don't know that she would necessarily recognize him because, oh wow, this adult man looks like this infant face I once saw for a second.
This adult man looks like a chunky child.
And is anybody seeing your like just born pictures of yourself? I mean, you look nothing like you do now for the most part. Some people they look a lot like, but it's, mostly you just look like a squished raisin when you first come out, or like
a really
carved potato.
little man.
A bag of something.
Trash.
Bag of trash. That's not sketch. Let me see. What was the other? Let's see. Now it's said that the tragic hero. Now this is one of the things I asked you to think about as well. It's said that the tragic hero and Oedipus has been held up as an exceptional and representative one. I'm sorry. I inserted a comma where there wasn't one. It is said that the tragic hero and Oedipus has been held up as an exceptional and representative one throughout history. Represents the best of that culture, society's values, beliefs, spirit, etc. And in Aristotle's Poetics, he held up Oedipus as like the greatest of the tragic heroes. And so he would say that all of this stuff, that he represents the best of the culture's values, beliefs, spirit, that's all embedded in Oedipus, right? Do you find Oedipus to be that for you? Do you think like, wow, this man is an exceptional person and somebody like, we could long to react like in this scenario? I mean, or do you think of him more as somebody, I wouldn't really want to be like him? And I'm not talking just from the perspective of the guy I murdered was accidentally my dad, or
the girl
I was my mom. Like, not that. I mean, divorce yourself from that. Like, kind of separate yourself from that mode. But like the way he responds to what he responds to in this play and his actions, would you hold him up as an example in our society today?
I like his response to like when his like country or whatever is in like this really bad spot, how he like genuinely tries his hardest to figure out what's wrong and bring it to rights or whatever. Like how he genuinely tries to fix it, and you see that throughout the story that he's like doing all this to fix the problem like with his people because he cares about them so much.
Takes it really seriously.
Yeah, so I really like enjoy his response to like the genuine tragedy that's going on like with people beneath him, and like how he actually cares about it.
He's not just empty words.
No, he doesn't make empty promises. He's very true to his word. But then I don't like how quick he is to suspect those closest to him of treachery. Like how he believes wholeheartedly in one moment that Creon, someone who's been by his side since he started here, is against him and plotting his death or his failure or his fall in any way. Yeah. He's very paranoid, but he's also like very true at the same time.
And there is the ending to consider as well. Like
where he's like remorseful or whatever.
Yeah, he's remorseful, and what he decides to do is essentially honor what he said he would do, which is he exiles himself and pokes his eyes out first. That's gotta take some resolve.
Yeah.
That's pretty high resolve.
Yeah.
To say I will poke my eyes out with my wife's brooch, which somebody called it jewelry in the discussion post. I don't know what a brooch is. Is it jewelry?
It's a pin, and like.
So that's jewelry.
Yeah, and like sometimes like in the they would like wear their shawls like this.
Oh, the Greek outfit that was held up by the two.
Yeah.
So he took those.
Exactly, that's what those are.
That's how it went. Just real quick, like.
Yeah.
Over.
Exactly.
No, it's probably no. Did he stab his eyes multiple times? In case the once didn't work.
Just in case.
It's crazy. So, I mean, I don't necessarily, I hold him, he's a great tragic hero. However, does he, for me, represent that which we want us to be? You never know, like being quick-tempered or like essentially passionate.
Yeah.
Could be considered, I guess, a virtue back then. Because if you look at a lot of these stories, sometimes they're like you had passionate characters you could tell you were supposed to like, who would make a brash decision quickly.
Oedipus is a very like complex character, and I think that's like I really appreciate that about him. He's very full of like everything he does. Like in his descriptions, he's like not a half full kind of guy, and he's not completely empty of anything. He's a character that's really relatable, like in a lot of ways as to how you would react to those situations,
or at least that we wish we could act like him in those situations.
Yeah, so I think he is someone that I would like identify with or look up to. Like with his ethics and just how he is.
I think it's interesting how in 2,500 years, though we've had a lot of advances in like the smoothness and the fluency of storytelling, we're mostly still the same as we were back then. Like it's so like we can read this now and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, this sucks. This is a sucky situation for this guy to be in. You know, it's. So I mean, even the Greek culture, it looks like they did have some differences, but for the most part, I mean, it's seemingly very the same. Does anybody just hate Oedipus and you would never do any of the stuff he did at all? I mean, the murder, of course. I guess some people were like, well, probably shouldn't kill people.
Probably.
Maybe.
Probably, it's a pretty good idea. Maybe.
There's room for doubt there. There are certain situations anyone would go to kill.
Somebody was mentioning in the other class, speaking of, that, and I can't verify the accuracy of this, maybe if y'all looked it up while I'm talking, but supposedly a play was written prior to this, and I don't know if it was Sophocles or Aeschylus or Euripides, that talked about exactly, this is a curse that was actually brought down through the family, which I do actually remember that this curse was inherited. But that Laius, I believe, what he did to bring this curse on his family, or at least continue the curse as it already existed, which I thought it did continue because I could have sworn his dad did something wrong as well, is I think that Laius like raped a young boy. And so, like, you're talking about, is murder ever okay? Like, in that case, I'd probably murder that guy. It's just wrong, you know? Like, I don't know, just there's something about y'all heard of, like, you like, read about, like, prisons and how they work?
Yes.
And if a prisoner is found to be in there for child sex abuse, very bad for the prisoner. Like, they're likely going to not make it very long, perhaps die in prison, at least have a very rough life in there.
Yeah, he raped a boy.
Raped a boy?
According to some sources, Laius abducted and raped the king's son, the king of
Peloponnesia.
Yeah. Raped the king's son, Chrysippus, and carried him off to Thebes while teaching him how to drive a chariot.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was partially motivated by the fact that it was the other king's son of the other place.
I'm looking at the same
So is that what you said? Is the king of Peloponnesia's son, and he took him back to Thebes?
Yeah, he was welcomed by King Pelops, the king of Peloponnesia.
That was literally named after him. So I mean, it's probably the partial. I don't know if he didn't like the king or what. I can't tell there. Do you know? Does it say what play that comes from?
This abduction is thought to be the subject of one of the lost tragedies of Euripides, with both Amphion and Zethus having died in his absence. Laius becomes king of Thebes upon his return. So a play by Euripides.
Now that really kind of sucks. Like, that really sucks because I don't know if you know that, like, a lot of the philosophical texts and ancient, like, Greek texts that we have in knowledge of, like, some of these ancient Greek stories come from letters that have been preserved, that are written about things that were in stuff that we don't have. Like, I believe almost everything we have of, oh man, who's the guy? Ancient Greek philosopher. I think it's Heraclitus. I think almost everything we have about Heraclitus comes from a Christian writer writing about how stupid Heraclitus was and talking about all the stuff that he said, and he's debunking all the things that he said, But a lot of people who are reading this work are thinking, wow, Heraclitus has some pretty cool stuff to say. And so it wouldn't have existed had this Christian guy not felt he needed to debunk what was being said. And those writings survived that he had. So it's really like a lot of these like writings that we have from the ancient Greek are actually things that refer to other things written by somebody else. Now Euripides is the one that we have the most plays from. I think that 19 of his survive, and Aeschylus I think is 9, and Sophocles 7, or it's split between Aeschylus and Sophocles. But I think the only stuff we have that we can actually read are the ones that survive. Now, why Euripides had more survive, I don't really know. It's a lot more.
People had more to say about his work.
And a lot of people say that sometimes, people will say that Aristotle is more influential than Plato, yet most of Aristotle's works, we don't have the works that were the most famous. We have these little like treatises he wrote just for himself that aren't interesting at all, whereas Plato was a skilled writer, and you can see that in the Republic, which survived. I don't know, it's really weird. Like, I wonder why didn't it survive if it was so popular? But Greek stuff.
Greeks.
Right.
The Greeks.
So I wonder, like, can we tell any differences based on this, of like the differences in Greek culture, and just by looking, like, can we see the differences in them versus us, and like what we value versus what they value? I mean, I think part of it too is we can't even really separate that from the fact that we're in an American. I was going to say an American nation, but we're America, right? So America is predominantly Christian, so a lot of the values that you'll see expressed are Christian. And if you think about, did I talk about this last time, like the Jesus story?
Which Jesus story?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean the one, the Bible Jesus. The Bible Jesus story.
So that is just one Bible Jesus story, or like the whole story is like?
Just the death and
Okay.
like if you just go through the death.
Okay.
So like if you think like, if we're talking about the definition of tragedy, we think about this as a story, not from a religious perspective. You have a guy who, son of God, extraordinary individual, who then is in the body of a man, which makes him act normal, and then he doesn't do anything wrong,
Ever.
and then is killed by the people he's trying to help. Like, I think that like maybe the pure tragedy of that is often like what draws people like to the idea of, oh yeah, Jesus is a great figure to. So I think that that's partially why, because he never killed anybody in the stories of him, like that we don't necessarily value murder as a means to an end in most cases. Though in Texas we tend to value self-defense quite a bit.
Quite a
I've always wondered about that. Like, I don't see anything where Jesus says, kill people.
bit. Even in self-defense.
Yeah, I have no problems with guns whatsoever. It's the weirdest thing. I have zero problems with guns, people having guns. If somebody comes and attacks you, you defend yourself. But I don't see that supported in anything in the Bible, which is a weird idea. And I don't mean it to say that, I'm not like trying to preach here. What I am saying is like, Christian values are ingrained a lot, in American society. And so sometimes that's where you go back to say, why is this thing? But I think that might be one of the differences here. Murder could have been a resolution to a problem if somebody's going to. But that's I guess kind of a Texas value, isn't it? Like they were looking like they were going to attack him, or like there was an aggression there, and so he felt he had to defend himself.
Yeah. I don't know if that's just Texas, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not just. I mean, there are others, but Texas is the one where like if you ask people outside of Texas, like, what's Texas all about? People just say guns.
Barbecue.
What? Another one? Something else?
It says barbecue.
Waffles shaped like Texas.
Barbecue. Everything's bigger in Texas.
You have waffles shaped like Texas.
Texas shaped waffles. We have such an interesting shape. Too.
Texas waffles are like 9 times better than regular.
Now, this has also popped up, and I don't know that you guys necessarily watch more of this. Most of the people I think that I was talking to in the regular track courses probably are working every day. Not that I'm saying that the difficult level of high school work you do now is not hard. It's still work. But what I'm saying is like they have to work and make themselves survive every day. So like they have an apartment, and they have a job, so they can stay in that apartment and feed themselves. And for the most part, y'all don't have to feed yourselves right now. You just show up at home and there's food. By the way, hang on to that as long as you can.
Anyone in my family.
It's a great living. Even in high school, when I was having to do all that stuff and be busy all the time, it's still fantastic just coming home and food's there.
Thank you.
That somebody's paid for. Now, if you're having to pay for it, of course, you're in the same situation. So you work, you come home, and a lot of those people that I talk to who are like that, they want to come home and when they watch something or read something, they want to feel like it's a release. Like, I don't want to feel the pressures of everyday life. So they're watching comedies, they're watching things where they can just laugh and not have to think, which I understand. However, some of you, I would think, maybe would appreciate the, dramas more so, and maybe you would feel more of the idea of catharsis. And I'm curious to what you think of catharsis, because that was the idea where, despite seeing kind of an ending that most people would find kind of depressing, like we see Oedipus die, he's our king, to save the people, he dies, or even like a story like Jesus where he perfect dies for those people that he's trying to help who won't listen. Excuse me. I mean, what we not necessarily the Jesus story specifically, but like other entertainment stories. I think about like movies like Braveheart, where there's some kind of ending where it shouldn't be a happy ending. We shouldn't be like, oh yeah, main character dies, I like this. However, there's this feeling of like, with catharsis, it's a feeling of like hope in humanity or something that comes as a result of seeing an ending like that.
Their death wasn't in vain.
That their death wasn't in vain. We want to know that they didn't die for nothing, or that they died in hopes of something else. Or, I mean, do y'all experience catharsis? Do you think it's a real thing, or do you think it's bull crap and you just want to stick with your comedies like your Ace Venturas and your Happy Gilmores?
I think it's a real thing to like a certain extent. Like you said, like if the movie leading up to the death is like just as satisfying, like there's enough strives and at the end before their death they slightly overcome those strives, then I get really satisfied because, they overcame it, and even if they die, like they succeeded at what they were hoping to succeed at. So all the knots are tied in the end, and that makes me happy.
Braveheart. Like he dies, he's a good guy.
He's a
But he dies. But we're like somehow at the end we're like, yeah, freedom. He died for freedom. And we're like cheering him on. Like I still wonder, like, I mean, what is it about us that like I will watch a movie, and it's usually movies that do this to me, not books. I know I'm an English teacher, but when I watch movies, somehow I get like transported and I'm there. When I watch a movie, I'll cry at the end of the movie, but still want to watch it again.
Me too.
Like I'm like, it's terrible what happened. When can I have time to watch it again? And
But there's also
I
so
watch
much
it again.
stress relief in crying itself, because it's like you're so like bound tight and then like when you cry and you let it all out, it just feels so nice.
Oh, that series is
great.
Is that it? But it's like I have hope too. There's something about like, even if it's depressing ending, somehow I feel like there's this weird sense of hope. Can we talk about the difference in the other class? Like I actually finally looked up instead of just saying words. The difference between comedy and tragedy, which those are the two distinctions in the past. Tragedy was a drama with a sad ending, essentially, but hopefully in some way uplifting if it's really good. But a comedy is merely a drama with a happy ending. So you would technically consider something like the Notebook to be a comedy. Well, I don't know. I guess you could say since they died, maybe it's a sad ending. What's a movie where people like it's kind of serious the whole time? I guess you could say. I don't want to give the ending of that movie away. What's a movie you would consider to be a drama that has somewhat of a happy ending, though?
Night and Day.
What was it?
Night and Day.
Night and Day. It could be if I knew what that was.
Oh.
Me too.
Safe Haven.
Is that Nicholas Sparks? Yeah, you would call that a comedy.
Do people not die in that?
Almost every Nicholas Sparks movie is a comedy. I still think that Notebook is a comedy. If you're saying a drama that has a happy ending, because they're two people who they grew old together and they died at the same time, that's exactly what you want,
The
right?
Martian.
What?
The Martian.
The Martian.
Yeah.
It's really interesting you mentioned The Martian because they did not like the designation of comedy. Because it's a, huh?
What were they hoping for? Like as a designation?
They were hoping for a drama. They were hoping to be called a drama.
I found it kind of funny.
Yeah, there's lots of funniness in it, and I think that's why it eventually got, called that. But if you think about the old definition of what a comedy is, it's a drama with a happy ending. So I mean that satisfies Martian.
Yeah, they should be called.
I can't stand there's this thing about did we ever talk about the Disney movie like Toy Story and the Deus Ex Machina? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Disney does that so often. It's like we're headed toward we might see a tragedy from Disney. It's like yes. And then Deus Ex Machina comes and sorry, that was me. That was my alarm.
Oh, okay.
So then we see what happens is they get saved last minute. I mean, it's so we want that to happen, but at the same time, I always feel like it's such a cheat. Like when I watched Big Hero 6.
I love Big Hero 6 though.
Like, I know I loved it. It was like I just felt like it was a cheat.
Yes.
And Toy Story 3 was a cheat. And Aladdin was a cheat. Basically, every Disney movie is a cheat.
Would Tangled be considered a cheat? Because I mean, Flynn does come to save her, but in the end she saves herself. And him.
In what?
In Tangled. Like Flynn Rider comes to the tower to like take care of Gothel, and then Gothel beats
Yeah,
him.
she sacrifices a lot for him.
Yeah,
So
she
I'd say
saves-
that.
She saves herself and him, and like ultimately wins her own freedom. And his heart. Okay.
Still a comedy though.
Of course it's not. But I was just thinking, like, it wouldn't really fall under, like, Deus Ex Machina, would it?
I don't know that one does though.
I'm still waiting for a date.
Unless you count, I mean, if you think that we should have the entire time been thinking about what would happen if that hair got cut, like if that was something that should have occurred to us, we just never thought about.
I don't know, I don't know.
The moment I saw that broken mirror, I knew he was going to cut her hair.
I didn't think he was gonna be the one that cut her hair, personally. I thought she would have done it.
I thought he was.
I always, like, as soon as she announced it, I was like,
Now, Deus Ex Machina definitely is when she cries her magical tear.
Yeah.
And he becomes like, oh, he's fine now.
Because the tear takes care of it.
I'm
He
still
should
waiting.
have died, I agree.
I'm still waiting for a Grimm Brothers version of Disney.
That would be fun. Where everything is a depressing ending. Isn't that where like Struel Peter who comes and cuts the fingers off of children at night or something like that? Or he bites if you suck your thumbs, he comes and cuts your thumbs off.
Or like
How fun.
Brothers version of Cinderella where I think she kills herself.
Yeah.
Because her dress is gone.
How fun. Let's see, what else we got?
Quote from the play.
I don't want to do this one. Nah. I like this from Tiresias, and I want to know your thoughts on it. Because this gets to the nature of value and reward. Because he says, alas, how terrible is wisdom when it brings no profit to the man that's wise. And this wasn't mentioned here, but y'all know this is the Greek story of Cassandra, or Cassandra, however you want to say it. I don't remember why she was given this gift, but she was given the gift of prophecy, yet cursed at the same time with having no one around her would ever believe her. So she could tell the future, but no matter who she told, they wouldn't believe her, and so they wouldn't act on it. So it's the curse of like knowing everything that's going to happen with no ability to change it, which sucks. And I think Tiresias is probably just so wise that he knew that he could tell people prophecies as it's not going to change anything. So he says, how terrible is wisdom when it brings no profit to the man that's wise, because he's wise, he knows what's going to happen, yet
He doesn't get anything.
nobody seems to want to think he's right. He's like, I'm just a blind man coming in here telling you what I know, and you're just like, you're out to get me. And I'm like, I'm just saying the truth, but it's not. This wisdom is not helping me at all. It's just making me get insulted, and I'll just go back home.
I love Tiresias.
I find it funny
He's
with
a fun
every
character.
prophecy
He's
ever,
great.
they say the prophecy, and usually the person acting on the prophecy makes the prophecy happen.
Yeah,
That is true.
Yeah, they encourage
Like,
it.
here's the prophecy, I want you not to do it. When they try not to do it, they end up doing it. No matter-
That's really
I think that's
key in storytelling, and you call that it's actually a philosophical problem called a causal loop, where if nobody had ever mentioned the prophecy, would the prophecy have happened? In most cases, probably not. One of the more famous causal loop problems. This gets to the idea of fate, which I had one of the last questions. So there's a I think it's a logic problem. I'm gonna just say it because I tried looking it up the other day in class and ended up wasting like 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna like do my best remembrance of what this story is. So there's a guy who he grows up in his house and it's just his mom that's raising him. He doesn't really remember his dad very much, but she has a picture of his dad and says where she met him. And he's a really smart kid. He grows up and he says, you know what, I feel like I missed out on this. I want to meet my father. And so he invents a time machine. And he goes back in time to meet his dad and say, hey, I'm your son. I really wanted to meet you all these years, so I built a time machine and I come to meet you. And he goes back in time, but there's a malfunction with the time machine, or it doesn't operate in the way that he thought the very first time he uses it. And he goes back, instead of however far he intended, he ends up going back like, I can't remember, it's like 40 or 50 years further than he intended. He meant to go back to when around he was born, and instead goes back like 40, 50 years before that. So he knows where his mom's going to be his dad, but he has to like kind of stay, around the area and live, but not ever introduce himself to their mom or let her see him because that'll screw everything up. Now, one day over time, as he's getting older and older and he's living and he's surviving on the land and stuff, he starts to notice that he goes to like a puddle one day or like to go get some water, and he realizes that his reflection in the water looks a heck of a lot like his dad in the photograph.
Oh.
And then he realizes, wait, and he goes to the place to where the mom is supposed to meet him, and she's there, and he's like, she's about to leave, and he's like, he's not going to be here, and it occurs to him like, oh crap, it's me.
I'm my dad.
And so he shows up and like he starts talking to it. And it's been so long since he's seen him, in 40 or 50 years since he's seen his mom, so he misses her. He left kind of when he was really young, so to him it's like he's hadn't even seen her in so long he barely remembers her. So he does start to strike up like a romantic relationship with her, and they end up getting pregnant and have a baby, and then he's pretty old at that point. So he ends up, I think, dying of something before the kid is born, and then the kid is born and grows up and
Does it again.
does it again.
Because it's him.
And the problem the problem of this in philosophy is, how does something like this happen? Where you have something that seemingly has no cause and just goes on a loop for eternity. And that also addresses the idea of fate and prophecy. Because if you think about Oedipus, what we have here is a causal loop. They hear about the prophecy, they start doing things that then bring about the prophecy. But they wouldn't have done them had they not heard the prophecy. But they did, so they have to. It's this thing that just, for eternity, it circles and circles and circles. And dadgummit, if they just hadn't taken a photograph of the dad. But instead, let's pose for a picture, okay. And then I have to meet that guy. Oh, wait, it's me. I mean, what are you going to think? You're going to think, wait, that looks so much like me. Of course it does. It's your dad. That's exactly what you would expect. But the idea here of fate is something slightly different, where fate, that's one aspect of fate is like not being able to change it. And that's something that's easy to see in like these weird almost time travel scenarios with causal loops. But I mean, just the idea of, do you think that fate exists, that there's only one time? I guess the question is, and here's the thing, you ever heard of determinism? Strict determinism in philosophy says that everything that we do from our birth to our death, or really from the beginning to the end of time, is determined. There's nothing that will change the flow of time. It will continue to flow on like it has, and everything that ever happens will happen in the future exactly as it's set up to happen now. So some people are the opposite, and they say no, there's no deterrent. It's completely free will. We all get to make all of our own choices, and we can change the flow of time. And there's people more like me who are compatibilists, who say that it's somewhere in the middle. It's like, yes, it's determined what will happen from the beginning to the end of time. Time travel is not possible, but it doesn't matter because we don't know what the future is. So every choice we make is free will because we can't possibly interrupt. We can't make a decision based on the future not knowing what it is. So there's no chance to change time, but we are on this one straight line from the beginning to the end of time, right? I mean, y'all think time travel is possible? If you think time travel is possible, then you're probably not a determinist. That's why I like time travel stories, because I like to see things I know aren't possible play out on screen. It's like it's pure fantasy. It's fantastic. I don't know. It's something to consider for next time. Think about the nature of reality, and can you actually truly make choices, or are you just a result of fate? I tend to think we can make choices, and everything is fated at the same time. You have a good one. Let's end on that deep philosophical note.
Yeah, you're hurting my heart.
What is the nature of reality as we walk out the room?
Oh my God.